Hello and welcome to the Women at the Top podcast interview series. My name is Regina Barr and I'm going to be your host today. I'm very excited to have joining me Dennis Van Norman. Let me tell you a little bit about Dennis before we get started. He was born and raised in a river town in St. Paul, Minnesota. He earned his undergraduate and graduate degree from the University of Minnesota and the College of St. Thomas. His professional writing has been in the corporate world and includes a business journal publication, writing strategic plans, mission statements, and executive speeches. At Van Norman and Associates, Dennis provides human resource HR support, helping companies of all sizes build, develop, manage, and retain healthy, productive teams. He is a highly sought after coach and excels at team training. So, welcome to our podcast today. Are you with me, Dennis?
I'm with you. Good morning.
I think we're
Well,
having, okay, we're having just a little bit of interference. If you do have any other applications open, go ahead and shut those down because there's a little lag from when I'm speaking to you and when we're hearing a response. But we're going to go with the flow because that's how we roll here. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in. We're very excited. I do have a copy of your book, Threading a Kayak Down the Mississippi. I don't know if people can see it. I know my lighting is not that great today. I'll put it over here.
hmm
Still not that great over there, but did my best to kind of showcase that. So I want to start out with just briefly tell us what inspired you to write the book, Threading a Kayak Down the Mississippi.
Okay. Well, Regina, first, thanks for having me on. And this is International Podcast Day, so I'm honored to be sharing this with you. What inspired
Perfect.
me to write the book? The book took about 3 years from the first word to the receiving copies from the publisher. Uh, what inspired me to write the book was actually paddling down the river. I had no plans on writing a book. I had no plans on paddling the river, but I got a phone call from my son Joe who said, I bought a kayak and Earl, his son, and he went down the river, got on at Boom Island, got off at Harriet Island. He said, it's the best money I ever spent. You should come join us. I was not
Awesome.
going to pass up the opportunity to do some paddling with my son and my 2-year-old grandson. So I wasn't planning on paddling. The opportunity came up. Uh, it took over 13 years to do the whole river. In 13 years, that's a lot of time on the river. 90% of it is boring. You spend a lot of time thinking. And so I would spend days, what might be a good title? How could I start the book? And so the paddling, the paddling offered a lot of thinking time. And so I tried it, writing the book in my mind first, and then just started whittling away. I traded the paddle strokes for keystrokes.
That's awesome. That's kind of interesting. I tell people I do some of my best thinking when I'm disconnected from different things, disconnected from phone, and just kind of walking. So it's
hmm
so important. And I love that you keep saying paddling because I could just picture you kind of like doing the paddling side by side.
Yeah,
However, I'm not a kayaker, so I could be getting that completely wrong.
no, you
And
got
the
it.
fact that you use that downtime. Now, you said 90% boring
hmm
and um, boring in that you just not seeing anything exciting, not interacting with other people. What about it made it boring? And then conversely, what about the other 10% made it exciting?
Okay. Uh, One, you're out in nature, so it's not boring like you're stuck in a room. And the scenery is changing at 3 miles an hour. So you go a lot, you go by a lot of trees, a lot of train tracks, those kind of things. for 90% of it. Sometimes it's 95% boring all day. Sometimes it's 50%. The other is what you're not expecting. And
Okay.
that can get uh, very exciting. Going through the St. Louis Harbor was was not boring at all. That was life threatening, and uh, we're here to talk about it. But
Yes.
but you do learn things, and if you're starting in Minnesota and Itasca, the river is such where you can walk across it, and so Minnesota provides a nice learning ground, nice proving ground for getting your paddling skills up to speed. The river is very small and it grows and grows. Doesn't run into any commercial traffic for the first 500 miles until you get to the Twin
Okay.
Cities, and then you're looking out for towboats and all kinds of other river traffic. So,
Well,
but
that's
you
that's
could say
interesting because
boring, or you could say a period for reflection. Yeah.
I like a period for reflection, although I will tell you that I don't go out on the Mississippi very often.
Mm-hmm.
And when we do, we have gone up through St. Paul and dealt with some of the big barges and things like that. But I always tell my husband, not really afraid of the barges. I'm afraid of the floaters, like what might be down in the water.
Right.
I
Mm-hmm.
said, that's what I don't want to know about because
Yeah.
the water is very dark. And I grew up near the ocean, so I'm used to water where you could actually put your feet in and see them, not
Mm-hmm.
and not have all that muckety yuck in the
Yeah.
bottom of the river. So, all right, so you're on this journey. You're going down the Mississippi. You had to learn to read the river, its currents and conditions, i.e., read the entire environment that you're entering. Even though it may have been boring, you kind of have to know where you are and be aware. So, how did learning to do that, to read the river's currents and conditions, compare to reading organizational culture and the business landscape, if you will, in HR, which you have as an area of expertise?
Yeah. Virginia, let me answer it, but instead of just with HR, let's look at it from a new leader's perspective. And let's say there's a registered nurse that's just been promoted to be a head nurse. She's in a new leadership position. What's she going to do? Uh, as I got into a kayak the first time, my son pushed me off a boat landing, and it was very tippy. I wasn't expecting it to be that tippy. I said, "What do we do? What do I do now?" And he said, "You'll figure it out." And this was right above the first St. Anthony Falls Locka Dam, which was open at that time. And after that day, we did 8 miles. We got out at Harriet Island. I had no interest in kayaking before. I knew I liked it then. And so I bought the rental kayak that I had used for that day. And I went the next day by myself down to Harriet Island, St. Paul. And I knew I wanted to do it. So how I figured out the currents and reading it, I literally read it. I bought books. I talked to people. I jumped in classes. I watched videos. And this is what I would suggest for the brand new RN who's now a head nurse. Uh, I think people should be very selfish about their careers. You are responsible for your career. The organization is not. The company has to take care of itself. And we saw recently Starbucks is laying off a couple thousand people. That's their
Yeah.
business strategy. They have to do that to take care of the company. You, as a new leader, have to do whatever you can. And so, like reading the river, read books, get a coach, get some alliances with your fellow workers, your fellow supervisors. Talk about it, read it, immerse yourself. The company may send you on a 2-day workshop and do that, but do a lot more. I knew that I liked the river, and so I learned an awful lot about the river in the winter. I probably read 20 books on people paddling down the Mississippi and learned all kinds of things. One of the things I learned is it's about the people. And that was not my
Yes.
plan. My plan was to do it to experience the nature of the river. As I got into it, I became very dependent on the people that you met along the way. And I enlisted help along the way too in the form of guides in the lower Mississippi. But so I set a goal to say, if I'm going to do this, I better learn how to do it because the river below St. Louis is a lot different than the one that we see here run by our house. Yeah.
Right. So it's interesting because I've always had a motto, have a mentor, be a mentor, self-mentor. And I think it's really critical because when you have a mentor, you're going to learn from their experiences. When you mentor someone, I find often that's when I learn the most. And self-mentoring is doing exactly what you're saying. Take a class, read books, watch videos, read articles, listen to podcasts, and
Yeah.
learn from what other people are doing. So I think that's some great advice for not just new leaders, really any leader who wants to stay
Hmm.
current in their field. So now I want to kind of go back to the book a little bit. And you talk about, that long journey you took and how long it took you to actually, over several 13 years, I think you said, to get
Hmm.
down.
Yeah.
So when you're doing a journey like that, and I'm finding that very relevant to me right now, efficiency matters sometimes more than that brute strength. Paddling with efficiency equals leveraging strengths, if you will, right? So,
Hmm.
and not always trying to, correct your weaknesses. I always believe we have to leave from those strengths. So, how has that shaped your perspective on helping employees and teams work smarter, not harder?
Hmm. Well, one of the things is set some goals. And this is figure out and communicate with if you're a leader, communicate with your team. What is the mission? What are we trying to accomplish? Uh, this is a book that came out in the 80s, One Minute
Mm,
Manager. And then he came out with putting it to work, and he put leadership in the 1 minute man. Those are all mid 80s. Uh, 1 minute manager has three things: set goals, praise people when they're doing the right things, and redirect people when that's necessary. And that was 40 years ago. I think those things still apply, and it seems so simple. I'm the leader. I've got an ICU nursing unit, and I'm the head of that. Uh, what do we have to work on? We've got 12 patients today. Three are very critical. Who do we make the assignments for? How do we check in? How do we communicate? We've got new. So the leader has to orchestrate that and communicate it. I believe, as far as keeping current, I think we need to bring a few things to the table, and these are basic. I think we have to know how to read, how to write, and I think with how to write, you should learn or you should realize, can you write or can't you write? If you can't write, find an editor that will edit your materials, because if you're sending out things, poor grammar, misspellings, that's overshadowing the message you want. So read, write, listen, and know how to speak, have a working knowledge of math, and I think the last thing, and this is a recent one, is embrace AI. It's
mhm,
here. We're not going to get away from it. A real quick story. I started messing around with a new book, a novel, and it includes a person in sales at 3M who was an American citizen but grew up in Russia, and he was on the Russian uh, special ops army team. So I told AI, please describe and name a Russian who works at 3M, just what I told you. In 30 seconds, they gave me his name. He's working in polymers at 3M. He was in this kind of unit. They gave me 2 pages that were very good. I would say it needs some tweaking. And I thought, I'm 80 years old. It will take me an hour to write a good paragraph, write and rewrite, about that. And so it takes me an hour to write a paragraph, and this is 30 seconds to give me 2 pages. And it's easy to use. Uh, and there's so many. So I think that's one of the things, as far as if we're keeping current, we better jump into that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're making a good point that, you know, if we look at, navigating the Mississippi, right? Some of the materials that we use to navigate has probably improved over the years. And, if we have tools available to us, we should use them. I think in addition to AI, the one that I think is so critical as a leader is to make sure that you listen, because listening is not the same as hearing. When you
Right.
really listen to someone, you are confirming, understanding, repeating back what you're hearing, and
Hmm.
making sure that there's some level of engagement.
Hmm.
Otherwise, it's just a one-way conversation. So I'm going to move us forward a little bit here. So you didn't
Hmm.
paddle the Mississippi in one day, as you said earlier. So you had to set milestones or waypoints.
Hmm.
So talk to us a little bit about milestones and how they can be helpful, not just when navigating the Mississippi, but when navigating or trying to build and grow a career.
Yeah. Uh, well, with the Mississippi, there are some people that do through paddling. They do it, and it takes about 90 days if you just do it. There's a person in St. Paul that I know that 2 years ago he set the record along with 3 other paddlers in a canoe. They did the entire river in 17 days. They paddled
Wow.
24 hours a day. Uh, but in my approach, I would put in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks every year. So my planning time, if I'm paddling 3 weeks, I got 11 months planning. And it does take some logistics because if you put in one city and you paddle down 40 miles to another, your car is at the other end. And how do you get reconnected? Around the Twin Cities, you can use friends and family to give you a ride. But once you're down there, you've gotta figure out this challenge. And an example was I would call a bike shop in in Burlington, Iowa, and they may rent bikes and canoes. And I would say, is there anyone there? I'm paddling. I will be in Burlington uh, on this date. I need a ride back up the river 50 miles to my car. Is there anybody that's willing to pick me up when I arrive, drive me back? I'll pay you $100 or whatever. And so that's part of the planning, but you had a lot of time. I think in leadership positions, you could do your leadership job by just answering the phone and putting out fires all day long. But I think you do need some time for a mentor of mine. He was a founder of Children's Hospital. He said, you need some containment time. Get
Mhm.
away from the maddening crowd, figure out, think about what's needed, how's the best way to communicate it, and then rely on your staff. That head nurse in the ICU may not touch a patient all day. She's getting all the work done through others. So some of it is getting a plan in your mind How do we communicate it and then enable your staff to get it done? Uh, I'm Ben Norman and Associates has been in business 35 years. Uh, Caleb Squires has joined us 3 years ago. He's 24 years old. We're in different universes. We're in different
Mm-hmm.
populations, uh, different teams. He has helped me so much as far as learning the language. I'm still trying to replace phone calls with texts and those kinds of things. But but and I think we have worked together very well. I think a leader doesn't have to do it all on his or herself. Enlist the help of your teammates.
Mm-hmm.
And if you enlist, you can't just wait for them. You have to actively pursue.
Solicit them. Yes.
I want you to help. Help me out, and get them used to that culture.
Yes.
Hmm.
I think that's a great point because none of us are an island unto ourselves. So I want to shift our conversation a little bit to when maybe things don't go quite as you planned or as you hope, right? Um,
Hmm.
I always like to joke, people plan, God laughs. So
Yeah.
everyone flips their kayak at some point. So
Hmm.
share a story of a capsized moment in your career and how you recovered from it.
Okay. There's a woman. I was a chief HR officer at Children's Hospital for a dozen years before I opened up a consulting firm. I'm going to change her name to Mary, but
Okay.
Mary worked in the accounting department as an accounting clerk. She was a young woman, early 20s, very hardworking, probably one of the harder working people you'd see. Very polite, very shy, a young black woman. And accounting was right across the hall from HR. So we would pass each other a lot and we'd all say hi, and we were friendly that way. One day I went into her boss's office. His name was John. He was the director of accounting. And we were talking about something. We weren't talking about Mary at all. But when I came out, uh, I said to Mary passing only as a joke. And in retrospect, it wasn't that funny. I said, "Hi, Mary. John and I were talking. He's wondering if he could work a little harder." And I said that only because she was the hardest working person in the department, and everybody knew it. And I got back to my office, and John called me, and he says, "I overheard what you said. I know what your intention is, but Mary came into my office. She said she's resigning, and she's naming you. She's going to civil or human rights department, filing a complaint about uh, uh, racial disparities, and naming you." That was a moment. That was a capsize. And
Sounds like it.
I'm the chief HR officer, and I have just caused single-handedly the hardest working employee to leave and filing a suit against us. I asked John, "Can I go talk to her?" And he says, "No, I don't want you to talk to her, but you may want to come over and meet with the rest of the accounting staff." So I did. And this is the listening part. I said, I hope you know that I didn't mean anything. It was a joke, not a good one, obviously. And there's a woman there that was probably in her late 50s, and she said, "Dennis, you're a 40-year-old suit and tie wearing cocky executive here, and Mary is a 20-year-old woman who's a clerk. You do not have an even playing ground.
Hmm.
Uh, she cannot banter with you the same way as if you were talking to a peer, and and you've got to understand that. And that was a lesson that I
Well, that was
Mary
a
did
big
not quit.
lesson.
She did not
Okay.
quit. She did not file a lawsuit. Uh, the smiles in the hallway were fewer and less frequent, but it was a terrible moment. And but uh, and I wouldn't have got through without the help of the other people saying, "Here's what you have to realize." And that was a learning lesson. So that was a
Yeah.
capsize, but I did recover.
That was a big capsize moment, and I'm glad
Yeah,
that you did
yeah,
recover. So let's talk about stamina on
yeah.
that note in our careers, having some longevity.
Hmm.
Um, what practices have you carried forward in your professional life just to sustain yourself, your leadership energy over the long haul,
Hmm.
especially when you're hitting some of these bumps along the way?
Well, you could say I'm semi-retired, and I don't know if you want to put the emphasis on the semi or the retired, but I still have a few clients that I've had for a number of years. But I try and have 2 or 3 meetings a week just to keep my uh, finger on the pulse of what's going on. I uh, I'm in a couple of organizations, the Optimists, the 49ers, where I meet regularly with other people. I try and have uh, a lot of times, if I go golfing or something, it's with my peers. I try and have some other meetings where there are young people. There's a number of meetings where I'm the oldest one in the group, but but I try and keep up with what's going on. Uh, I'm counting this as one of the meetings for this week, by the way. The other thing
Okay.
I do, I try and get in a regular walk, and oftentimes it's down on Shepherd and Warren Road, right along that Mississippi. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I like well, first of all, I'm going to count this as one of mine. Um, and I also try to do things outside. How many coffees can you really have when you're trying to connect with people? So a lot of times I try to do with those who are open to it a walk and talk
Hmm.
where we get together and we
Yeah.
walk for 30 minutes or 45 minutes and then we
Hmm.
head back on to our day. So then we all get some steps in, we get some community and connection, and it's all good, I think.
Hmm.
So we are actually winding down on time. So I like
Hmm.
to conclude with what is one last piece of advice that you can give our viewers or listeners today that they could take away? Just one.
Okay. Uh, One is going to include two things. One, hire smart, build a good team. We're too easy at letting people in that shouldn't be. And along with that, fire fast. Uh, if you got a C minus or a D or an F player, you can raise your team GPA by letting that person go. You don't think that person can't do any job in the world. You just know they can't do the job they're in. So cut them loose. Let them find the job that they're good at.
Yes, and
I
very
think that's what I
often,
have.
yes, I agree with you. I always say hire slow,
Mm-hmm.
fire fast, but I do like your take on it, hire smart. But that's
Yeah,
like a conversation that I frequently have with people because they do it in the reverse.
yeah.
They hire fast and then fire slow, and it really can bring down an entire team. Like you
And
said,
the slow can be 20 years. Now, I used to say hire slow, but it's tough now because the job market as it is, if you see a good candidate,
you got to
they're looking
snap them
at
up.
other places too.
Yes.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
you move too slowly, yes, you can lose out good candidates. So with that, that's all we have time for today. And I do want to say thanks for joining us, Dennis. It's been fun to connect with you and talk about your book. And I want to also say a big thank you to our viewers and listeners for joining us today. So see you all next time.
Thanks, Regina.